Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and it's week 13, which means it's time for the discussion of ranks. We're going to talk about who's up, who's down this week in week 13. Of course, to help me go through all these guys is Pat Fitzmaurice, and our good pal Joe Bond is back again. And today we're going to talk about the running backs here on the program. We're going to get through the RBs, find out who Joe's got higher than Pat and vice versa, and see if we can get the information we need to make the right decisions for our lineups in these crucial weeks leading up to the playoff run. So, Joe Bond, I hope you are ready to rock and roll. Before we even get into these guys going forward here today on the program, I got to ask you a quick question here. Joe Mixon is expected to practice Wednesday. That's a player we're going to talk more about later today. So, going into this ranks, I know Pat's actually got him higher than you do. You've got him at RB15. Pat's got him at RB9. ECR today has him at 19. Obviously, this is a volatile situation. But what is your confidence level going into this week with Joe Mixon coming off of this concussion, even though he's got this incredible matchup here against the Chiefs looming?
I mean, coming off of an injury, like, you always got to worry, like, you know, well, with concussion, right? You know, just quickly, we've seen players this year already get concussions back to back like that. So you worry a little bit about that. Perine's been good. You also worry with Jamar Chase coming back. I mean, earlier in the season, Mixon wasn't a juggernaut, right? I mean, like, finishes of like, running back 9, but then 20, 43, 13, 27, 12, 12. I mean, like, okay. But I mean, I find it hard to just immediately throw him back into the, top 10. And, you would expect this to be a very high scoring game. And so you expect a lot more passing, which, Mixon's involved in the passing game, but with Chase there, I would expect there to be a little less going his way, at least some of the more important touches.
Now, when these two teams lock up, historically, the last few years, the point total gets obliterated. It's 52.5 already on the consensus line over at Betting Pros. Now, Pat, you've got Mixon as a top 10 play this week. And I know when there's more scoring, there's more opportunities. That's obviously something we have to consider. No matter how much Mixon does or does not work in the passing game or whatever the game script is, there's going to be a lot of potential opportunities in this game if history does repeat itself. So what is your confidence level in Joe Mixon this week in week 13? Because you seem pretty confident from your rank.
I do, and maybe this is an issue for people in 10-team leagues with loaded backfields who are choosing between a bunch of really good. I get questions like that every week where people have like 4 great running backs and I have to sit one of them. So, I do have Mixon in the top 10. He has not been super efficient this year, under 4 yards per carry, and but like the volume has just been massive. I mean, he's averaging 15.8 carries and 4.1 catches a game, so just under 20 touches a game and 91.9 yards from scrimmage per game. So the volume is just there week after week. I mean, and that's just how the Bengals run their offense. When Mixon was out last week, we saw Pirine get 21 touches. So whoever's the lead back here is going to get the rock. They're going to get it repeatedly. And in a game with, a high point total, that means some touchdowns. And I kind of like Mixon's odds of maybe getting one of those touchdowns.
Yeah, look, I'm with you, Pat. In those 10-team leagues, that's a scenario where you have options and maybe you can afford to wait, but I can't imagine a lot of scenarios where you can't wait. That being said, because of some of the surrounding concerns, is it something that if you do play Mixon this week, you better look for a little more upside in the flex, do you think?
No, I mean, I like if he's cleared, it's possible that he could get a second concussion. Like that has happened before, but for the most part, like I'm not super concerned about the risk and like altering the rest of my lineup to count for any potential re-injury risk.
All right, let's move on to the next player on the list here, and we'll have another one of the guys that Pat is higher on than Joe. Rachaad White, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Pat, you've got him ranked as RB17. Joe's got him at 21, so more of a flexy kind of play than RB2 play. ECR is very high on him. ECR is all the way at 14 right now on Rachaad White. Actually moved one spot or two down in the last hour or two. I see him now at 16 since put the show together yesterday. Coming off a game, Pat, 14 carries for 64. 9 of the 9 targets he caught for 45 yards. So he was very active in this game. I know we're still waiting for a little bit more clarity potentially in this backfield, but Rachaad White has a matchup against the 9th-ranked defense against the run, which is the Saints this week. But White certainly was getting involved in the offense quite a bit when Fournette was around and when Fournette was not around. So what are your thoughts on Rachaad White in week 13?
So I've got him RB17, and that is factoring in the likelihood that Leonard Fournette comes back. I'm ranking him as if Fournette will be back. So he's going to move up even more if Fournette were to be ruled out. I just think he's going to remain the lead guy, and I am not alone in that belief. Greg Allman, the longtime Buccaneers beat writer for The Athletic, he believes that White is going to continue to get more snaps and touches than Fournette once Fournette is back. And you can just kind of see it. Like, he is faster, more elusive. There's just juice that Leonard Fournette has not shown all season. And since week 2, Leonard Fournette has averaged 2.9 yards per carry and hadn't had a run of more than 17 yards all season. Like, there's just no burst there, and now they're getting a little bit of burst out of the running back position with White. I don't love the matchup against the Saints, whose banged up defense is starting to get more healthy. Cameron Jordan's back now. But, man, I mean, you said it, Joe. Like, he gets work as a pass catcher. He gets work as a runner. Like, there's dual threats, point production here in fantasy.
Now, a few weeks ago, Joe, when Fournette was still in this backfield before the injury really took place, you had a situation where Rachaad White was getting 22 carries for 105 yards in that game against Seattle. Now, again, different scenario, different team, different opponent, all of that. However, your thoughts on White potentially even as a flex play this week, your confidence level, if indeed Leonard Fournette does return and muddies the water a little bit. We're in kind of, as I like to call it, this is the end game. This is the point in the season where you've got to find the right guys. You got to give them the lineup because you only got a week or two left here to make the playoffs. So is Rachaad White one of those guys for you that is a risk worth taking?
Yeah, I mean, as everybody's alluded to already, right? The workload is there. He's shown pop. I do like him as a player. I still just hesitate slightly, which is why my rank is a little bit lower with Fournette being there. I mean, look, they're not going to completely phase out Fournette. I mean, at best, this will be a 50-50 split, in my opinion. So, and then you got to figure out, when they get in close, who are they going to get the red zone touches to? I mean, you got Leonard Fournette, who's a big boy. Let's be real. I mean, he's 6 foot 200, right? Rachaad White, 6 foot, or he's 228. I mean, he's got 15 pounds on Rachaad White, probably, if that's probably generous. So, when you get down close, maybe those goal line touches go to Fournette, and that just plays into it as well. Plus, I mean, Pat, you said it, man. This matchup's pretty brutal. They pretty much shut down that San Fran running game.
Yeah, which was not hard to do.
Man.
It's just pretty hard to do. Yeah, very hard to do indeed. So it's one of those starts where I feel like Rachaad White pays off if he's involved in the passing game again to even close to that extent. Rachaad White pays off. If he doesn't, like Joe's saying, perhaps you're losing a little of that touchdown equity with a Fournette return. It does make it a risky play. So these are guys right now that have a lot of risk into them. Another guy, too, that is very risky, and I'm glad we're talking about him today. Forget Benjamin Button. I want to talk about the curious case of Kareem Hunt, because Kareem Hunt hasn't had a double-digit half-point PPR game since week 5. And boys and girls, we are in week 13. And he's got Deshaun Watson back. They're playing Houston. Everyone is jumping back in now, and seems like they have some odd confidence when it comes to Kareem Hunt. And Pat Fitzmaurice, you seem to be one of the guys that has some odd confidence here. You have him at RB28. Joe's got him at RB34. ECR is at 33 right now. And when I'm looking at Kareem Hunt, I understand when we were approaching the trade deadline, you put him in bubble wrap. Nobody wanted to play him. They wanted to see if they could move him. Okay, fine. But then when he didn't get moved and he hasn't been part of the offense, I have no idea what's going on here, and I have no confidence in playing him at all. So where is it coming from here for you when you're looking at this matchup in Houston, where you look at Kareem Hunt and you think he is a viable potential starter in week 13?
Yeah, so it's certainly not like it was in the past where Kareem Hunt had standalone value. And if you were holding him, you could always maybe, think that if something ever happened to Nick Chubb, suddenly Kareem Hunt becomes this super smash play or whatever. Of course, Nick Chubb is totally indestructible, so that never happened. But so yeah, when I do rankings, Joe, like I try not to make a lot of assumptions about game script because those things often go haywire on us. And I'm kind of breaking that rule a little bit with Kareem Hunt here. I suspect that the Browns are going to be somewhat run heavy this week in Deshaun Watson's first game back. Trying not to have him come out of mothballs and immediately throw 40 passes in a game. And hey, the Browns are 7-point favorites, so I do think they're going to get a run-friendly game script. I'm not assuming they're going to blow out the Texans. In fact, I kind of like the Texans as a wager this week. But
yes, you and I talked about that on the betting show earlier, that maybe the Texans show up here. This is their Super Bowl, to steal a phrase from Pat Fitzmaurice.
It is. And, but at worst, I certainly don't think the Texans are going to be blowing out the Browns. At worst, it's a close game, and, that will keep it run-friendly for the Browns, who like to run the ball a lot. It's just the Texans' run defense. I mean, it's so bad. They've given up 1,591 rushing yards to running backs, most in the league. They've given up 14 touchdown runs to running backs, also most in the league. Nick Chubb is going to eat Sunday, but I'm guessing there's enough food left on that buffet table to also feed Kareem Hunt this weekend.
Well, Joe, let's get your take on this, because the one thing with Kareem Hunt, when he's catching 4 balls a game, you could still kind of say, all right, well, there's at least that double-digit floor in there. But that hasn't been the case. I mean, in terms of targets, in the last 3 weeks, he hasn't seen more than 2 targets in a game. That's just not coming. And I know there's this, it seems to be this feeling in the industry right now, in the community of fantasy football, that Deshaun Watson is going to come in and just cure every ill right away for the Houston Tech, old times, old habits die hard for the Cleveland Browns offense. But that's kind of a tough sell because the guy hasn't played in a year and a half. So should people be cautious of Kareem Hunt this week?
I think they should be cautious of this entire Cleveland offense, to be honest. I really do think I know the Browns have to pull the trigger on Watson because of what they paid him and what they've gone through with him. But I kind of think we're going to see this offense take a step back, at least for a few weeks. Maybe the last couple of weeks of the season, Deshaun starts getting going here. But, it's not just Hunt. Chubb's going to be Chubb, right? We know he's going to be fine. He hand the rock, he'll figure it out. But I do worry a little bit about even Amari Cooper and stuff like that, just taking a step back. I mean, Cooper's had his most consistent season to date. I mean, it's crazy. That was my one knock on him forever. It was that he would have these 45-point games and he'd have 3-point games in a row. And you're like, well, okay. But he's been really good. But with Hunt, I know what you're saying, Pat, about, there being enough there for him to get his. But I mean, we've seen it in the last few weeks. Chubb's getting 20, 25 carries. Hunt's getting 6, 5, and 5. I don't think he's just not good. They're just not using him. So even in the weeks where he's gotten double-digit carries, it hasn't worked. He's just not been productive.
Yeah, it's been a very weird season for Kareem Hunt that I think everybody thought initially he would have more value. Everybody was hoping for a trade. It didn't happen. Everybody thought he would have return value. I feel like we're in this weird loop with Kareem Hunt where we keep waiting for it to get right. This is another instance where we're trying to trick ourselves into that case. Maybe Pat's right. Maybe there is enough meat on the bone there where everybody can get fed. But I don't know, man. This is a tough one. I'm more where Joe is, not just because his name is Joe, but I'm more where Joe is, where I'm waiting to see what this offense looks like and how Deshaun Watson looks after being, not in the game for such a long period of time. You just don't know what you're getting necessarily, or who he's going to favor in the offense as well. That could be a huge difference maker. This offense could look nothing like it's looked in the last 5-6 weeks. Also, if you want to get more in tune with some of the wagering market, as I know we've been talking about here a little bit today and even on yesterday's program, another great way to do it is the Daily Juice podcast, which Sean Green hosts every single day over at the Betting Pros. So if you go to bettingpros.com/dailyjuice, you can check that out and subscribe wherever you get your pods. You can check it on the YouTube channel on Betting Pros as well. It's 15 minutes every day, what you need to know in the world of wagering, college football, basketball, NBA, even the World Cup stuff he's got going on, of course, NFL as well. So check out that Daily Juice. Let's switch gears here and flip the script, and let's talk about some guys that Joe is higher on than Pat. We'll start with David Montgomery, RB13 for Joe. RB20 for Pat, RB15 in the ECR. So, Joe, let's talk a little bit about, we know we're still uncertain about Justin Fields, where he's at in terms of his return potentially. The matchup this week in division against Green Bay, certainly he's had all the volume to himself, was really good against Atlanta, not quite as good against the Jets, obviously, but clearly a safe play in terms of volume. So what do you see this week against the Packers in Montgomery's future?
I'm still in on Montgomery. Like you said, I have his ranking pretty high up there at 13. I mean, look, the volume is there, as you said. You could argue he was actually better last week. He just didn't find the end zone. I mean, he was 14 for 79 the week before, 17 for 67, caught 3 both weeks, 54 and then 34. I mean, you know, splitting hairs there, but he just didn't find the end zone. That's going to be the problem with them right now. If Fields doesn't play, it's just that offense moving down the field. They were relying on Justin Fields' legs to be able to, you know, get chunk yardage like that. They're not going to have Mooney, obviously, but it's really hard not to like a running back getting close to 20 touches a game right now. In, you know, at least for, you know, high end RB2 level.
Yeah, and look, volume is king, Pat, something we always talk about, but also the quality of that volume does matter. If Fields plays this week, is that something where you're moving Montgomery up or down your rankings, or possibly does he stay the same?
I'd move him up for sure. I'm assuming that Trevor Siemian is the quarterback, which is why I have Montgomery at RB20, so in mid-range RB2 territory. That's it. We saw the Bears score 10 points against the Jets last week. And granted, the Jets defense is very, very good, and the Packers defense is not. But I would still have concerns, though, about the Bears' ability to put up points and, engineer long, sustained drives and give Montgomery the sort of volume that he needs to really go off. And by the way, like with Khalil Herbert out, we thought maybe it would be like 80% snap shares for Montgomery most weeks. And it kind of was until last week when he played about 2/3 of the snaps, and we saw Darrington Evans get involved and get about 1/3 of the offensive snaps. So maybe it's not quite the, all-you-can-eat arrangement for David Montgomery anymore. But it's mainly about the quarterback thing. And I think if Fields is announced as the starter, I'll be closer to where Joe and the ECR are with this rank.
I think I did see that Fields was limited in practice today, so there's good news. But yeah, Green Bay's run defense is worse than DVOA, like 26 in points allowed fantasy. Like it's a good matchup.
It certainly is. So we'll see as the week goes on, the health of Justin Fields and what that impact is on David Montgomery. One of the most frustrating picks this year has to be DeAndre Swift. So much potential. All of it we saw in week 1, and then we really haven't seen it since. In fact, he hasn't gotten double-digit carries in a game since then. Okay, and it's week 13, just to give you a little perspective. Now, Joe, I did watch this game here on Thanksgiving with the Detroit Lions, who should have won and beaten the Buffalo Bills. They had more than one opportunity to do so. And in this game, there was a run here at the end with DeAndre Swift where a touchdown was called back because he had scraped his knee. But on that run, he was fighting for the end zone, and he looked really strong and powerful. This was a DeAndre Swift I hadn't seen in a long time. I don't want to put too much in one play, but looking at the rankings this week, you've got him at 28, ECR's at 26, Pat's still at 32. Pat's still hating on my boy DeAndre. But could we possibly be seeing DeAndre Swift getting right again based on what we saw last week on Thursday and a little bit extra time as well to prepare for this game?
I hope so. I have him in a bunch of leagues, although I'm pretty dead in the water in those leagues, partially thanks to DeAndre Swift, unfortunately. I don't know, man. It just really is hard to trust the amount of workload. The snap counts have not been in his favor pretty much all season. I mean, even week 1, when he had that great week, it was way more of a split than I think anybody was really expecting it to be.
Well, he seeded the goal line work. He had 15 carries for 144. Like that's the reminder of who DeAndre Swift was. Like, we got to go all the way back there. 15 for 144, 3 catches for 31, and a touchdown. That was a pretty good day. He was RB3 that day. Remember that? September.
I do. I had so much more hope from outside.
It was such good feelings. Summer vibe still. The sun was out. Didn't get dark at 4:00 in the afternoon. that time of year. But honestly, I mean, I guess at a certain point too, the Lions are starting to, show some signs of life these last few weeks. I know, look, they beat the Giants. They were in this game in Buffalo. This is a winnable game for them at home against Jacksonville. Absolutely. Isn't it time to just kind of open things up and see what you have left in the tank with this guy?
Sure. I'm not pushing my chips into that though. I mean,
fair enough. I'm trying to bully Joe into
I think I've got him higher than Pat, but I still don't love it.
All right, Pat, I know you probably don't love it either, but let's talk about DeAndre Swift. So what's still stunning for me too, he's played in 8 games and he has 5 touchdowns. I mean, Alvin Kamara has 3. So they all came in 1 game. So I'm trying to gauge here, what is the situation for you where you feel like you have to start DeAndre Swift over XYZ? Like, where are we at with those kind of players? There's guys that are just seeding carries all over the place. Do you see any upside to Swift? What are your thoughts on him in week 13? Pat, you're muted.
I've got him at running back 32, so there are not a lot of guys who are primary contributors to their running games who I would have playing ahead, I guess. Since week 2, he has averaged 5 carries a game. He is in the Kareem Hunt zone as far as usage. And he has averaged 4.4 targets a game, but Swift has been strangely inefficient as a pass catcher this year. Like, we thought he had this Alvin Kamara upside in that phase of the game. He's averaged 5.3 yards per target, which is kind of a crappy number even for a running back. And he hasn't had more than 40 receiving yards in a game all season. So not only that, but he's clearly the number 2 behind Jamal Williams, who the Lions obviously like a lot. But they're also working in Justin Jackson as a number 3. So, like, this is a 3-headed committee. And, Swift is not the lead in the 3-headed committee. It's just hard for us to envision him getting the sort of volume he needs to pop. It's pretty much big player bust with Swift in any given week. So I don't want to play him unless I'm backed into a corner.
All right, let's get to the next guy and final one on our list here, A.J. Dillon, who also, just like DeAndre Swift, was really good in week 1. Things were looked really good that 1 week. Why couldn't we just extend that over? Last week against the Eagles, though, first time since week 1, he's had double-digit half PPR points. 16 points from 18 carries for 64, a touchdown. Also had 3 receptions for 24 yards. Now, Joe, you've got him at RB 31 in that flex conversation. Pat's at 35. ECR is right where you are, Joe. Give me your take on A.J. Dillon this week. Is he somebody that you could start considering the injuries to Aaron Rodgers and the potential that you might see more Jordan Love in this game than people realize if indeed Rodgers has to come out again for whatever reason with some of these side, the thumb, all the different things that Rodgers is dealing with right now?
Yeah, I think if Rodgers doesn't play, this is one scenario where I do think, kind of like what we said with the Browns, right, where they're going to rely more on the run game, and the secondary running back is going to get more of the work, or more work. I think that is true here. So if we do hear that Jordan Love is going to be the starting quarterback, I would probably bump Dillon up slightly. Not a lot, though, because he just, again, these are all guys that just really haven't been efficient this year. And Aaron Jones has been phenomenal. Every time he touches the ball, it feels like it could go to the house every time. Dillon's just sort of been plodding his way, hitting guys and just falling over. It's weird. Last week was a totally different story, though. Like you said, he looked great, and it's like, where's that been all year? So I mean, yeah, there is a chance that Dillon, slides up my ranks a little bit, but he's still just in this territory with Swift and Gus Edwards and these guys, and it's just kind of like, man, I hope you don't have to use them, but they're there if you need them.
Look, this is personal for us because A.J. Dillon was somebody we were both very high on, and now it feels like we're getting teased here after last week. Are you buying this? Are you buying A.J. Dillon for week 13?
I'm not, Joe, and I might differ philosophically from our friend Mr. Bond on the quarterback thing, because I'm never going to bump up a guy for a lesser quarterback. I just think lesser chance of scoring points and touchdowns, lesser chance of having sustained drives. If there's a QB downgrade, it's true, it might lead to a few more extra touches, but I just think in all
the
likelihood,
quality of those touches are the question mark, right?
Yes,
is what you're saying.
yes. And
Gotcha.
you kind of said it, Joe, like we haven't really had any reason to get excited about Dillon since week one. The 88 yards from scrimmage Dillon had against the Eagles last week, the most since week one. His touchdown last week, his first since week one. And granted, the Bears' run defense is not good. So it's possible Jones and Dillon have a ground and pound sort of day this week. But I don't know. Dillon is averaging about 10 carries a game and about 2.5 targets a game. Like, there's just not a lot of volume here. And
if you sold high, Pat, on Kareem Hunt, A.J. Dillon, and DeAndre Swift in week one, boy, you made out. Like, it has been nothing but downhill for all those guys since then.
Yep.
I was looking at it's like week one and then nothing almost. I mean, Swift had some touchdowns in there at least. All right, let's get to the throwdown where I throw out a player that I'm higher on than ECR, and Pat Fitzmaurice checks me. Let's talk about Dameon Pierce. Now, I understand last week was very tough. I understand the week before, not great situation either for Dameon Pierce, right? Where he's facing a very, very tough Washington front. But here we go. Dameon Pierce this week gets the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns have been run on all day long. I'm trying to put my faith back in Dameon Pierce. I've got him at 15. The ECR's got him at 21. So, Pat, am I giving too much credit here to Dameon Pierce, or what do you think?
So I am between you and the ECR here, Joe. I've got him at RB19, and it's just I'm torn between those two inputs. One being the terrible Cleveland run defense and factoring in this positive matchup for Pierce. The other being that he's had 15 carries for 16 yards in his last two games. You know, the 1 yard a carry thing, not real exciting. After Pierce had looked great, you know, I am still very high on the player, but obviously the Texans are in kind of a bad way right now. But yeah, we talked about this being their Super Bowl, Joe. I think they're going to be fired up to face Deshaun Watson. So, man, like, wide range of outcomes for Pierce this week for sure. He's going to be a polarizing guy, and I know I'm going to get about 100 start-sit questions involving
I'm
Pierce.
playing him against the Browns. I'm always playing running backs, especially ones that can get 15 to 20 carries. All right, last one here. We got a listener mailbag question right from our Discord, fantasypros.com/chat. Free to join, but our premium membership lets you get into stages, AMAs, and a whole lot more. Joe, I'm going to throw this one out at you since obviously he's been a theme of the show. This is from King Drew. Is Swift droppable for Pacheco or Rachaad White in a PPR rest of season? Is that a move you want to make, dropping Swift for Pacheco or Rachaad White? Would you do that, Joe?
I would definitely do it for Rachaad White. Pacheco's sort of 50-50 for me. Yeah, I mean, Pacheco's not getting any red zone usage, so like at least Swift sort of gets like those dump off passes every now and then. Pacheco gets nothing. They basically put in McKinnon.
What do you think here, Pat, about this one? Would you do that?
I'd drop him for White for sure. I'm with Joe. I'm not quite as I think I'd rather have Pacheco than Swift too. Although now that the Melvin Gordon signing complicates things a little bit more, it's kind of a tougher call there.
Can we give Melvin Gordon a ball in a big spot for the Kansas City Chiefs? I don't think you can. I don't think.
When do they play the Broncos? Next week.
He should be nowhere near an end zone for the rest of his career. Okay, let's just map that out.
He plays the Broncos in week 14 and week 7.
I don't want no revenge narratives. No.
If the Chiefs wanted a Wisconsin running back, they really should have taken Jonathan Taylor instead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire a couple years.
Fair enough. All right, Joe Bond. Everybody go follow him on the Twitter machine at F6P_Joe and check out his work at Fantasy Six Pack. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Joe and Pat, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.